What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Mint City Soccer Show. I am Corey Insco here again with Johnny Wakefield. How you doing, Johnny?
I'm all right. Hi, Corey.
And also joining us this week, we have a third person in the studio, which is exciting. We're not sitting alone talking to each other. So this is really good. We have Jay Landskroener, who is the president of Mint City Collective, joining us. How's it going, Jay?
Pretty good. It's an awesome time to be here, isn't it?
It is an awesome time to be here.
Yes.
It's a great day to be in Charlotte. It's always a great day to be in Charlotte.
Every day is a good day.
It's been pretty gray lately. It's been gray. I'd like to insert some levity into this happiness.
Wait, what about this?
In like the first minute.
We had
the fact
tornadoes.
that it was 70 degrees today, and it's the day
Just
before
been
Valentine's
gray and
Day.
rainy. I need Seattle to go away.
But where else can you have tornado warnings and snow within 48 hours of each other?
That's
I
true.
mean, really,
It's been a little weird.
It's a great place to live. We got to love Charlotte. So this week we're doing an episode that I'm titling, assuming I remember to do it when I actually upload the episode.
Important.
The History of Mint City. It's a history lesson, Johnny. How
All right.
excited by that are you?
I love history, actually.
Yes, we are nerds. So
That's right.
We're all for this. But we mean that in a couple different ways. We're going to talk a little bit about the actual history of Mint City, because I feel like a lot of people, especially when the name was first announced, were like, what the hell is Mint City? Like, what does that mean?
Yes.
Where did that come from? So we'll explain it a little bit in Corey's History Corner.
That could be a recurring segment in the podcast.
It really could be. And then we're also going to talk to Jay a lot in the second half of the show about the history of the supporters group itself. You know, how it kind of got started, what brought us to here, what's going on now, all that kind of stuff. But first, we wanted to see, Johnny, do we have any breaking news, anything going on with the team, anything going on with Charlotte soccer in general we should make sure we hit on before we get into our history lesson?
Nope. Literally,
All right, that was fast.
literally nothing. No, it is mid-February now, so it's been a few weeks since our first episode. We've done one edition of the Chronicle, but there just hasn't been anything big. I think people are really looking forward to as we talked about in last episode, the kits and the crest and the colors and all that sort of stuff. But there hasn't been anything of that. We did miss in the last episode Thomas Schalling, who was hired as the director of scouting. So he's another one to add to the list. They have essentially 4 hires at this point.
Is he the one that got his scouting credentials from Football Manager?
I think so. No knock on Football Manager, but he did that as a teenager.
It works.
According to an article on the website, and then kind of built out his scouting expertise from there. So all of you teenagers listening who play Football Manager, tell your parents this is an important life skill to pick up and use for your future career.
Man, you can get esports scholarships now. There's like NASCAR drivers who start on iRacing.
That's
like
true.
it's a thing.
Interesting.
Just tell all the kids that listen to our show.
No kids listening to our show. We're all in
I
our
hope
30s.
no kids are listening.
How you doing, fellow kids? No, so we have not very much news, actually, as far as today, but maybe before the podcast comes out, something huge will happen and we'll look like idiots.
Of course. I better turn this around fast then.
Yeah. No, I've got one more thing.
Hold on. I was going to ask a question before we get to that, though.
Okay, go.
Are either of you surprised, concerned might be too strong a word, that we don't have any more news at this point? Do you feel like things should have been moving faster by now? Or is it just like, I mean, because like we've talked about this a lot before. It's like, we've got a year. Like, this is going to happen really fast. So it almost feels like there should be more going on.
Well, I think there's 2 parts to that, personally. I mean, Chris Ashley put out that article in the Chronicle. It was the second or third edition of it, and you know, I've been looking at that like, oh man, what's our timeline going to look like? Using that as almost like a timeline Bible, but
Right.
You know, we're not far off from where he's been, and you know, we're putting key components in at the front office, which I think is obviously more important than having a logo or a jersey design.
Sure.
Even having a team name. So putting those components, I think, really sets the priorities for this team. You know, if they come out and made the announcement and by January 1, they had already had a name and a crest and colors, but they didn't have any personnel to go along with it, I think that would have put everything a little bit backwards. So
Would that worry you more if they were?
I would think we were like Nashville or Miami or something. You know?
We don't want to be like either of those.
We'll talk about that at some point,
Cautionary
right?
tales.
But yeah, I do think that the priorities are in the right order right now, and it's not to say that, you know, the team probably knows what they're going to be called. They probably know their color scheme. They probably know their branding.
I want to know it.
A lot of
Tell me.
I
Tell
want a
us.
T-shirt.
Come
Yeah.
on, team.
Johnny, I think you said it. I can't remember if it was in Slack or if it was
Yeah.
on the previous podcast, but MLS's first week is coming up. And I would not be surprised if the team announces sometime during that week its name and its branding. Either one or just one or the other. You can't have the branding without the name, but maybe a color scheme. But I do think something like that will come out maybe sometime around the first week. It might not be before. It could be shortly after. But it's a talking point. And I know the rest of the league will be looking and watching what us and Austin are doing. And I think, the fact that Austin's had an extra year.
Yeah.
A lot of people are looking at what they're doing. And they just signed a player or something like that? They just did something big not very long ago. The jersey sponsor.
Yeah.
They got Yeti,
Yeti,
as a
that's
jersey
right.
sponsor, which, by the way, I love Yeti.
Are they going to be our ad?
They can
Hey,
sponsor
Yeti.
us.
You would like to sponsor us?
Yes. But, and they're much further along than we are, but it's not completely necessary to be that far along. I mean, I think we'll see. We got along now. It's going to be, 12 months ahead of us?
12 months.
To really put it into gear, but I mean, you've got the next 6 months to really get the key components there.
Right.
After that 6 months, then I'll start getting nervous if we don't have a lot of things.
Yeah, if we've done like 12 episodes, we don't have a lot of news. We're really in trouble. But hopefully, we'll stay tuned for some more coming up. But I know you had one other point you wanted to make too about some cool things going on.
Well, yeah. Just on that point, I think that it's fun to have things come out. It might not be essential, but in order to build up interest in the team, they can't do building interest in a team in 3 months. They need to be spending time, I think, building up the brand, building up a fan base, getting people at least knowing the name of the team. It sounds like there's going to be some information sent out to people who have put in deposits sometime soon. Probably just more surveys, trying to get more information on their hands or into their hands. But I think I want to see them make some more hires. They put out, I think, online today or yesterday, mid-February, whenever you're listening to this, that they're hiring for some of the sort of logistical positions, group ticket sales and just some of the things that you need to operate a professional team. So if you're interested in working for the team, go to their website. But they need to start building that infrastructure soon. Like Jay just said, Austin's ahead of us because they've had a little bit more time, but in order to make Charlotte an attractive place for those free agents, or in order to kind of make it into a team, they have to start doing some work.
Well, and to touch on that, I mean, there's still it's a franchise owned by a franchise that's existed for 20 years now.
Right.
So, the personnel that they're hiring right now are actually higher level front office personnel. Everybody else is probably going to be crossover from the Panthers organization.
There will be some of that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think especially ticket sales reps, I think they were looking for ticket sales and group sales supervisors, stuff like that. But I think as far as the other personnel that are there, I think that there's going to be a lot of crossover coming.
Yeah, you have some infrastructure already in place that you can.
Right. So maybe we're not as far behind. There's key components as we both.
We're just impatient. We're excited and impatient for things to happen. So I think it's a big part of it too.
Yes.
The only other real news that has kind of broken in the last few weeks is that Major League Soccer and the Players Association agreed on a new collective bargaining agreement, which will have big ramifications, I think, for how the team is built. One of the guys in the collective, Vaughn Pullman, wrote an article for us, and that's coming out on Monday in the Chronicle about what that will kind of do to the building of a team and what kind of doors that opens up for a new team as it's building. But the big story on that is that there's not going to be a strike. They have a 5-year labor agreement now, which
That's good.
There was some concern about. And I think it has kind of maybe not kicked the can down the road necessarily, but it has at least said, it's made small gains for the players and the team and the teams and owners, and has said, or is just a sign that the league is healthy. The league is actually going to work. It's not going to close down. And that's a big thing for fans, especially in Charlotte, as a strike right before our inaugural season would have been terrible.
Not ideal.
And so now we've got at least a few years for them to figure out some of the bigger issues. Well, I'll let Vaughn and maybe Jay or Corey, if you want to now, talk about kind of what those things were. But some minor gains were made for the players, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, the one thing that I noted in one of the articles I read on MLS's website was it's very rare in sports when you have a CBA come out and both the owners and the players come out confident with what was released.
Right.
And so, both sides came out kind of I think both sides left a little bit on the table that they wish they hadn't. But I think it was important, especially for the players. I think the next couple CBAs are more for the players than the owners.
They need to make some gains, yeah.
And if you look at the very kind of limited PDF file that they put out, there was, over the course of the next 5 years, each year the players gain a little bit. It's not a whole lot.
Right.
They go from 8 chartered flights to 16 over 4 years.
Progress,
5 years.
right? Small, but
yeah,
progress.
And so you get those little things. You get the base salary up. You kind of
there's free agency stuff. There were a bunch of small things. Yeah.
And I think the TAM. That kind of changed a lot. So I think a lot of the players, you're going to see a lot more quality coming in, and it's going to be a fun next half decade to watch Major League Soccer and watch the growth and especially with the potential and the greatness of the city of Charlotte coming into it.
So the other one thing that I want to mention kind of before we move on to the rest of our show here is that our friends at Street Soccer 658 are launching something here soon. They're starting their street league, and they've got 100 people that are going to sign up and participate in this league. So we partnered with them in January and did an event that was really fun.
A really cool event.
Did we talk about that at the last podcast?
We might have mentioned it.
I haven't given it.
We talked about how we dressed that we could come play, and then
Right.
realized we should definitely not play.
No,
Jay, you played, right?
Jay did play.
I did play, and I scored a goal.
Nice. We had to.
And I was sore for about a week and a half
Yeah.
afterwards.
I was
Those
not
balls
sore.
are heavy.
It was rough. But I haven't given it a full write-up on the website or anything yet. But we did a fun event with them and kind of got to know their organization and the work that they do in East Charlotte. And so they've reached out to us again and said, hey, if you're in the Mint City Collective, hopefully you who are listening are members or at least involved with it, they're looking for volunteers. So they want some people to help with their street league that starts here in March. If you're interested in that, they're looking for, volunteers for like scorekeeping and stat recording and referee and announcing for the games. If you want to do color commentary, like any way that you can get involved, let us know. We're in Slack. Jay, Corey, and I are all in Slack. We can talk to you about it. And we're not exactly sure on Mint City's side, like how we're going to be involved, like officially, if we're going to sponsor things or if we're going to just come alongside or support them. So it's all a conversation at this point. But if you're interested in that, it'll probably be in East Charlotte in the coming months. So let us know on that. Street Soccer 658's Spring League.
Awesome.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Thanks for letting me pump that.
Way to get a plug in there. All right. So now, for probably the best part of the show, I would say personally, is Corey's History Corner.
Corey's History Corner. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
This is me talking to myself. No. So like I said at the top of this, we are obviously called the Mint City Collective. And I think, again, that reaction from a decent amount of people were like, what is Mint City?
Even in Charlotte.
Why do we, even in Charlotte, why do we like the color green or the color mint?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's up with that? Everybody calls us the Queen City and all that stuff. So I'll ask before I get into my history lesson, did y'all know the mint story in Charlotte before now or before it was announced?
I knew that there was a mint and a mint museum. I didn't know the story by any means.
I was involved in the naming process.
Yes,
so.
I figured you were.
But I also was a tour guide in Charlotte for about 4 years. So
Nice.
So you two should do this.
Yeah, Jay, feel
Jay
free to
and
jump in
Corey's
with
history.
anything that I gloss over or miss. But I'll give the Cliff Notes version for people who might not know. So
Was there a mint here?
there was.
Sorry,
that's the whole story. There was a mint here.
We're done.
So cool. No, so back in the first gold find was like late 1700s, but early 1800s. There was a gold rush in the Charlotte area. There's Reed's Gold Mine up in like Cabarrus County is where they first discovered some gold, and there's the gold district in like kind of south end areas where there was a lot of other mines. But yeah, there was a gold rush here in Charlotte you may or may not have known about. And so as a part of that, on March 3rd, 1835.
Man, this is good.
Yeah, right? I'm doing this without notes, everybody, right? I'm just off the top of my head. President Andrew Jackson, signed into law a bill that created the first mint branches outside of Philadelphia. Ooh, Jay's raising his hand.
Did you know Andrew Jackson's from the Waxhaw area?
He is.
Of Charlotte.
Unclear whether he's in North Carolina or South Carolina, but the Waxhaw region.
Well, South Carolina's always trying to complain or steal things from North
Carolina. One Carolina. That's good.
We're not going to get into that.
We're all Carolina, right? All Carolina.
All Carolina.
But anyway, the man from the Waxhaws created the first mint branches outside of Philadelphia, and Charlotte was one of that first group. So Charlotte had a mint that stood on West Trade and, you guessed it,
Mint Street.
Boom. Which Mint Street's the road that now it runs right in front of Bank of America Stadium, which is also kind of perfect for all of this too. But that mint started producing gold coins in 1838. During the Civil War, the Confederate soldiers, or the Confederacy, I guess the better way to put it, took over the mint and turned it into offices and kind of their headquarters here in Charlotte, and it never produced any money again. So after that, it was used as like government offices through like 1913. And in World War I, it was the Red Cross headquarters and was a meeting place for the Charlotte Women's Club.
Nice.
I'm giving you all kinds of fun facts about this.
So is this the mint that's now on Randolph? Sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
Spoilers, please.
Sorry, I'm blowing it.
So after the war, it sat vacant for about a decade. And so the post office was built right beside it. And that post office was trying to expand, and they were planning to destroy and tear down the mint building. But basically a civic group, a bunch of local citizens got together and wanted to save it. So they got the money to relocate it down Randolph and opened the first art museum in North Carolina.
Wow.
Which is the Mint Museum down in the Eastover neighborhood. So that was in 1936.
So we have some mints. There's a mint museum in Uptown. Can you
tell me more? There is a mint museum in Uptown.
How did that happen?
I mean, that happened because Charlotte MLS team needed a place to make their announcement.
So we made that happen.
It was a long play to get to that. Yeah. But the one last fun fact is that Charlotte minted coins with the C mint stamp are super desirable for collectors because they're relatively rare. Like the Charlotte Mint, even when both Charlotte and Philadelphia were minting coins, like Charlotte produced way fewer coins than Philadelphia did. So
there's no correlation there with the Union and their MLS team. So we're gonna let that. Like
we can make one if you want to.
But they did better than us, so we gotta let that go.
Oh,
sorry.
But we're worth more.
I did find one of those coins on eBay actually.
Did you really? How much was it?
$6,000.
Yeah,
and I don't have that sitting around.
It's in the thousands. Yeah, for anything minted in Charlotte, it's very, very valuable. Because they were super rare.
So was there a mint then in Atlanta?
No, there was actually never gold in Atlanta. All they had was a bunch of railroad spikes. And
man, that's too bad for them.
So, and actually, I wanted to say that one of the reasons that the mint was put here was because it was actually more expensive to transport the gold from the Charlotte region up to Philadelphia. It was cheaper just to put the mint here.
Interesting.
And we can blame Atlanta for that because they would probably have railroads to go through.
We'll happily blame Atlanta for anything we want to.
Yeah, but to touch on Mint City, actually the eagle that's on the back of that coin is one that we used for the Mint City Collective design.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, we did an homage also to the textile industry in the region by the weaving of the feathers on the wing.
Love it.
It's a good logo.
Yeah, it's great.
As a history nerd, I really appreciate the thought that goes in something like that. So that's really cool.
I wish I could take credit for it, but it was all the varsity guys, 1,000%. They're the most creative bunch in Charlotte. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, now you listener are armed with fun facts about Charlotte's history and Mint City history. If we want to talk about the Mech Deck. Can we talk about the Mech Deck too?
Let's leave that out of this podcast. Maybe in the next podcast.
We'll wait for the May 20th podcast and get that out there.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right.
But for now, we are Mint City for a reason, and not just because we like green and hues of green.
We like green, and it works out well that it runs right in front of the stadium. Like those are all great coincidences, but those aren't the actual reason for the name. Yep. But we'll get more into the history of the supporters group and how that all comes together after this quick break. Johnny, Jay, we still don't have no sponsor.
No sponsor yet.
No sponsor. We got some nibbles.
We have some people who are interested.
We got nibbles, but still no whopping. We don't have that podcast cash flowing in yet. That sweet podcast cash that I hear so much about.
Yeah,
why am I here then? Why am I here?
We are drinking beer.
So yeah, what we're gonna do instead is similar to last, but we're expanding from a little bit from the last episode. We're just gonna give shout outs to things that we appreciate, and mine does so happen to be beer. I am drinking right now a Lazy Bird Brown Ale from my favorite Charlotte brewery. I love all the breweries, but I do have a favorite. I'm not gonna lie.
You can have a favorite.
Birdsong Brewery.
Birdsong's good.
Birdsong is my go-to. Even back when they were in that little tiny place right across from the old Noda. Mm-hmm. Love that place. They make my favorite beer. If they canned Higher Ground, I would go completely broke on it constantly.
It's probably good they don't.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But yeah, Birdsong's my place. And if they want to send us free beer, I'm totally open to it.
I like bicycles. So if you make Kona bicycles, I think you're based in the Pacific Northwest, but please be our sponsor. I bought my bicycle at Queen City Bicycles in South End.
There we go. There's a local shout.
Queen City Bicycles, I think, is no longer in that same building, but they're around. So if you want a Kona bicycle, contact the guys at Queen City Bicycles. See you guys. That's an ad read right there.
That's
Jay,
really
do
good.
you have an ad read?
I do.
Oh,
actually.
perfect. Here we go.
I'm going to read it straight from their website. So Mint City Collective would not be what we are without those at the Varsity.
Varsity.
Okay? Varsity. GoVarsity.com.
Not the one in Atlanta.
Not the one in Atlanta.
That's a bad restaurant.
That's a restaurant, isn't it?
Screw that restaurant.
Whatever. Yes, screw that restaurant. Never been there. They probably have good food. But
I haven't either.
Nope.
all right, anyway. So, game recognized game. Okay? You're the best at what you do, which works out, because so are we. Pearson, Nick, and Tim create solutions that instill a sense of pride for fans and brands alike. Our approach and processes are purposefully designed to rally around and work side by side with your team, which means our partners will be involved from the initial strategic session until the final design detail is set in place. And I can tell you from my personal experience, all of that is true.
Wait, what's happening now?
that.
I got lost.
We were shouting out Varsity.
Partners.
So
That's
they're
right,
just
Varsity
to back up. They're the ones that did like all the branding for
100%
Mint
of
City,
the
right?
branding of Mint City Collective.
Including our logo.
Yep.
Including-
All members.
Beautiful.
Yep, they're good dudes.
Good dudes. Good shout
dudes.
out.
That was good.
All right,
Bicycles, Varsity, and beer.
and Birdsong beer.
That's a good trio
We
right there.
nailed it. Good ad read, guys. Now back to the show. All right, guys. So in the second half of the show, we are doing the history of Mint City Part 2, which is the history of the Mint City Collective. Our little MLS, I keep saying little.
It's not little, man.
It's not little. It's
1,000
massive.
people.
It's ridiculous.
We don't
how
even have a
massive it is.
team.
Yeah, the large and robust Mint City Collective MLS supporters group here in
I thought you were talking
Charlotte.
about me personally for a second there.
Could have been me too. we were a robust podcast. All right. So want to talk to you, Jay, about this a lot. But before we get into the Mint City specific stuff, this is something that me and Johnny did in the first episode. So we kind of want to hear like your soccer story, your Charlotte story, your Charlotte soccer story, kind of what led you to this place as being the president of Charlotte's MLS supporters group.
Yeah, so like most people, I started out playing soccer as a kid. When I was younger, we didn't really have access to watching soccer on TV. Occasionally, ESPN would put games on, but as a kid, I didn't really know here for there. It wasn't the Baltimore Orioles. It wasn't the Washington Capitals. I really didn't care.
Were you in North Carolina then? Or?
No, I was in Maryland as
Maryland
a
at that
kid,
point.
yeah. And, so when I grew up and I vaguely remember the MLS being announced and the World Cup coming around, but it wasn't necessarily the biggest part of my life. And in that year, what was that, 94, right?
94 World Cup.
Yeah.
And so, I remember DC had a team, and I would see it on the news every once in a while. But as a kid, do you really watch the news? So I didn't really care, and it wasn't like ESPN was plugging it instead of baseball, and so. I played it. I loved to whenever it would come on TV, I would watch it very briefly. I didn't really have the attention span to. So I just loved playing it. And as I got older, I got more immersed in the culture. I think associated with DC United, whether or not I watched them avidly or not, that was my team because it was regionally my team. And so... even though my dad would call soccer communist kickball, I think it was you that said
kickball.
you're somebody you related to said something of the similar sort. So So and as when I was in high school, I played. I was on the JV team, and one of the guys from the varsity comes over and he's like, "Hey, what's your Premier League team?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm a DC United fan." And he's like, "Dude, really? MLS?" I was like, "Yeah, it's the best league in the world." And he goes, he's like, "Dude, no, you've got to watch
England.
England."
In the 90s. It was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, this is 1999, man. I mean, so I was like, he's like, "Man, you got to check out the Premier League. Do you have Setanta?" And I was like, "You mean that pirated channel?" Like
in the 90s.
Yeah. So, and he talked me into watching it. And so he's like, "But you have to get up early." And, I couldn't go online and just
all of this
find
sounds terrible.
It was,
do you have this pirated channel? Do you want to get up early on Saturday in high school? Like, absolutely.
No. It was like the worst scenario. But I remember, and one morning I got up, and I'll never forget it. It was Everton versus Newcastle. It was, I was young. I was 15 at that time. And there was this up and comer kid that they had been mentioning, and eventually I would follow, Newcastle a little bit. And then a few years later, I saw them play Everton again. And there was this kid that was the same age as me playing for Everton. And I was like, man, that's crazy. I could be playing soccer in this league. And so, long story short, I eventually became a Manchester United fan because of a guy named Wayne Rooney.
Heard of him?
Yeah, and so him and I were the same age. We still are.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah. I just became an avid watcher of the game. I didn't really play after my freshman year in high school, which in hindsight was kind of a mistake. I went to play American football because my friend convinced me. And I wish I had continued playing. I probably would have played through college and even if it was at a D2 school, but got more immersed into the culture once I moved to Charlotte. And I went to college here. I played lacrosse actually, but I was friends with a lot of folks that played soccer. I actually refereed the soccer league at UNC Charlotte. And as I would get up early in the morning, watch the games. At that point, it was Fox Soccer Channel, and you can get the Fox Soccer Plus. And so I was streaming that on my cable internet. And
the kids that are listening have no idea. All those kid listeners that we talked about earlier, they don't know what we're talking about at this point.
Hey, we're doing the history lesson, right?
That's right.
So, but yeah, and I got more immersed in the culture when I left school. I got into the job, my dream job. It wasn't my dream job. It wasn't even what I went to school for. My dream job was actually in radio, but I got into a restaurant and was working as a line cook. And, when you're in restaurants, you're surrounded by Latin American folks, a lot of Mexicans, a lot of Salvadorians, a lot of Hondurans. And they knew I was a Manchester United fan. And every time Barcelona and Manchester United would play in the late 2000s, it was pretty intense in that kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the first time I'd really known that there was other soccer fans. And then one day I was looking in Creative Loafing, a print version of it. And I saw this ad for this Turkish restaurant in what was called the French Quarter. And I was like, man, that's where that jazz bar is across the street, and that closed down a few years ago back then.
Mm-hmm.
And then At the end of the tidbit about the Turkish restaurant, there was a thing about a soccer bar that had just opened called Hooligans. And, this is probably September of 2009. And one day I went in on my break and stopped in. I think it was Mark or Christian, one of the owners. It's like, hey, come on in. I was like, I'm not drinking. I got to go back to work. Sat there. I was like, man, you guys open up at 7 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Like, dude, that's when we have the most people in here. And so I was like, cool, I'll be back. I came back, started watching games, became pretty good friends with those guys, and started meeting a lot more soccer fans, people that I didn't know existed. And in January or February of that year, 2010, Christian made me sign up for this group, and I inevitably became the 25th member. And by doing so, I made the American Outlaws chapter in Charlotte an official chapter. And then over the course of 2010, you had the World Cup. Everybody famously remembers the Donovan goal against Algeria.
Talked about that one last time.
Yeah, that was when I got into soccer. That was my game that got me into soccer.
So, and at that point, I was actually a bartender at Hooligans. I'd gone there so much they gave me a job. So
they could not get you.
So, I was up early watching a lot of games, and I was really, truly immersed in the culture. And after that World Cup, Queen City Outlaws kind of went through a little bit of a change, and I took over as the president of Queen City Outlaws, and I would actually go to do that for a couple years. During that time, I was doing Segway tours and bartending at Hooligans. So the Segway tours at one point took me down to St. Pete, Florida. The NASL was actually relaunching then, and FC Tampa Bay started playing at Al Lang Field. And they wanted to be called the Rowdies, but they couldn't because some T-shirt company in Texas owned the rights to that name.
Really?
Yeah. But I spent about 6 or 7 games watching the FC Tampa Bay play with Ralph's Mob. And it was my first time outside of USA games being immersed within the fan culture of a specific club. And I was still a DC United fan, still a Manchester United fan, and I ended up leaving there, going back to Maryland. I had some family issues. Came back to Charlotte, got a job that eventually transferred me up to DC. And I ended up living there for a couple of years and became a capo for the Screaming Eagles, or field team member as they called it. And so, I spent 2 seasons leading chants for DC United, one of their supporter groups, and it was great to be truly, truly immersed in that culture, especially at a team as historic as DC United, with that culture. And they were doing pretty decent things back then. It was right after Ben Olsen took over, and Andy Nahar was kind of up and coming. Bill Hamid was relatively new. Eddie Johnson played there for a little bit while I was there. And so being there, going to away games, experiencing that, it was great. But my heart still fell to Charlotte. And while I was up there, I got a text message from a good friend of mine, Sean, who in years past, him, myself, and some other friends, Matt Garner, had sat down and kind of devised this plan to how can we get a Major League Soccer team in Charlotte. And
a billionaire. Plan over.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
I'll tell you, that was not part of the plan.
It should have been.
It was
we could have this a long time ago.
Part one of the plan was actually to find a team owner to kind of take the Eagles and either build them into a team that the whole city can get behind, or to buy the rights from them. And I had gotten this phone call from Sean saying, hey, man, there's a owner that's looking to buy the rights from the Eagles. And I was like, interesting. And so we had pieced together what is now known as Jack's Militia over the course of about 6 months. And during that time, I moved back to Charlotte. And once the independence, the Charlotte USL team was launched, and they started doing their branding and all that stuff. Jack's Militia needed to lay its foundation down. And so myself, Sean, Matt Garner, and a handful of other folks, we just kind of helped build that culture. And it wasn't easy that first year. Not for the independents, not for Jack's Militia, not for any of the fans of that team. And so I ran them for a couple of years until ultimately life led me to not being able to run them anymore. And so I've kind of sat back casually, and then I'll get into the Mint City story here shortly.
Yeah, I was about to say this is not your first time launching or being at the beginnings of a supporters group. So yeah, let's get into the Mint City piece a little bit. Kind of how did you get involved? Like where tell me the story of where Mint City got started, where you kind of got involved with it. What do you kind of know about the beginnings of the supporters group starting up?
Yeah, so out of the blue one day, during my Jack's Militia time.
Sorry, I'm just cracking a beer here. Don't worry about it.
During my time with Jack's Militia, I had actually met Zach Luttrell of the Roaring Riot. It was right around the time Roaring Riot was trying to launch, and he was trying to just gauge ideas of what to do with membership and how to grow it from. He was looking at the American Outlaws. And trying to build a structure with the way that they do things. And so he wanted to get more information on the how we did it in Charlotte. And, him and I, we got together at one game. Actually, I'll never forget this game. Johnny, I think you were there too. The Independents were playing the Charleston Battery. And Jack's Militia had extended an invitation to bring back the Buzz, the Hornets guys, the Hound Legion for the Charlotte Hounds, the now defunct lacrosse team. And then we had Jack's Militia and the Roaring Riot there. So you had all four major supporter groups, fan supporter groups of local sports teams at one game. But it was not under the greatest circumstances for Charleston because it was right after that church shooting. And so Bring Back the Buzz showed up with a bucket, and we're taking donations, and we were at the tailgate, crying with their fans and just, showing our emotion. We'd met them numerous times. I met the Charleston fans when I went down there during the Challenge Cup to watch DC United play. So I'd been friends with these guys for a long time, and I've never seen more adults cry in one event that was a sporting event. And it was such an emotional event, but it was very, we were well connected within the community because we had all those groups there. And then I'll never forget after the game, the Charleston players and the Charlotte players all came up into the stands. And Jack's Militia, the regiment from Charleston, and all of the Charlotte fans and the players of both teams just got together for this one picture. And it was a surreal experience. And the reason I even say that is because that was the last time I had heard from Zach. And then randomly
and meanwhile, Zach built Roaring Riot for the Panthers, this massive organization in town.
Yeah.
Over 7,000 members nationwide, I think worldwide actually. So he was doing good things. Cam Newton's talking about him in interviews. Ron Rivera's wearing their shirt. Like,
my favorite thing is when you go to watch an away game and you hear like a keep pounding cheer, or like them cheering like louder than the home fans. They do really cool stuff. It's amazing. And
so one day, it was right around Christmas or New Year's, he called me and said, "Hey man, we need to talk about something." And I was like, "Sure." I said, I'm kind of busy during the week, but maybe one day I can meet you after work. I live in Belmont. And he's like, "Dude, I live in Belmont too." So I was like, "Well, let's go to this brewery." And we ended up meeting at a brewery that's no longer there because all the breweries in Belmont shut down.
It's now a brewery desert. That's very sad.
Yeah. Well, there's more. There's more coming in.
There always are.
There always are. Yeah. So we met, and Zach, kind of hush hush was like, "Look, man, Tepper's been talking about Major League Soccer, and to be honest, I really think that the team is really going to make a push to bring Major League Soccer here, and so I want to create a supporter group for any bid that this team gets." because they're going to need fan support. That's going to be it's got to be one of the check marks that the league looks at. And so he said, I want you to help me lead this thing. I said, fine. And I was like, let me know what we need to do. Give me a call when it starts happening. And a few months later, he calls me. He says, what are you doing next weekend? I said, not much. Why? What's up? He's like, you're coming with us. And he said that we're going to that city. we went to their home opener last season. And it was kind of a twofold thing. It was the first time I had met the varsity guys. One of their brothers played for the Cincinnati FC. And Atlanta was playing against Cincinnati in that game. So they were going to immerse themselves in the fan culture. We went very incognito, right? So we were walking around the tailgate. We went to the tailgate of their supporters. We actually marched with them into the stadium. Yeah,
these guys are spies.
Marched with them in the stadium, and keep in mind the whole time I'm kind of like, oh, this is how we did this thing in DC, and this is how it's done in Philly and New York, and I'm just kind of I'm reliving my MLS years. And they're experiencing that culture for the first time. One of Zach's biggest attributes to a Roaring Riot is his ability to throw a tailgate. The guy throws a tailgate like none other. He does a hell of a lot of other things too, but his tailgates are awesome. So when we're walking on the tailgate, he's like, man, they're doing this and that, and there's 10 different supporter groups, but there's, kind of this umbrella, and we were going through all that stuff. Then we get into the stadium, and in retrospect, this is where the varsity guys come into play, because they're looking at the branding, how the team does it, how they associate that stadium as a soccer stadium and took out the football. Mm-hmm. And so when we were walking around, they're like, man, you don't see very much football stuff here. And it's not wrong. Like it's a lot of just black and red, and you see it, and it's just the same branding, just a different theory. Right. So from there, we met with the varsity guys and discussed kind of ideas for identity. Identity was the biggest question. What is Charlotte's identity? And let me ask you guys that. What is Charlotte's identity?
Queen City. I think that's the first answer that most people say, right?
It is. I think, what does that mean?
Nothing.
Banking town.
Right. Banking town. I think this is one of my, going back to my Observer days and things I did there, like something I wrestle with a lot is like, it's hard to find Charlotte identity sometimes.
Well, a city planner told me that Charlotte's identity is vanilla. And vanilla's not bad because you can add sprinkles to it, right? You can do your own thing, and people like vanilla. But at the same time, it's vanilla, right? It needs to be. We need to build something more. Yeah,
and I don't say it's the crap on Charlotte either. I think it's an amazing city. Yeah, there's a reason I live here, and that I plan to stay here for a long, long time, and love the city. But I do think that's the one knock against it is it doesn't have some of that, like, what is Charlotte?
And even the Queen City is like claimed by like 7 other cities, right?
I think it's more. I think it's like 30. But so we were looking at that, and we knew outright Queen City was not going to be an option. We did not want to utilize that. We thought it was overdone. It's nothing against that branding of the city. It's just we wanted to be associated as ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we saw this as an opportunity to kind of redefine the sporting culture in Charlotte. The Hornets are going through a crazy transition. The Knights are still good, but they're in Uptown. They're more of a 5 o'clock drinking thing. After work, go get a drink, watch the Knights play, and go home.
Yes.
Says Johnny wearing his Knights hat.
I actually really enjoy that.
Yeah. And the Panthers obviously now are going through a transition. They weren't when we were in initial discussions, but the Panthers have their identity. But it doesn't necessarily translate to all of Charlotte's residents. And the reason being is that a lot of people that live here are not from here. Mm-hmm. And so we needed to bring in some idea of how do we take the transplants and combine them with the unicorns, the Charlotte natives, right? And how do we bring that culture plus the soccer culture that has Latin America and the Caribbeans and the Africans and the Europeans and the Asians. And how do you bring them all together? Right. And I personally saw this as an opportunity similar to that of what the Hornets did in the 80s and 90s, where Charlotte's identity was the Hornets. I lived in Maryland, and the team that I supported in basketball, I've not been a basketball fan my entire life, but the team that I resonated the most with was the Charlotte Hornets. They sold out every game.
Like literally the only thing I knew about Charlotte growing up in St. Louis for like 20 years. That's all I knew about Charlotte was the Hornets.
And me too. And so, we saw this as that, I hate to say it this way, but the second coming of the Hornets ideology. And so we had to really build upon that. And we had to, we couldn't call ourselves the Transplants as a supporter group, right? Which I'm not going to lie, was floated around.
I can see that.
And then
that'd be amazing. Amazingly terrible. Yeah.
The varsity guys put together a great kind of presentation for us. And I brought in a panel of folks that I had been involved with the American Outlaws, Jack's Militia, and other people that I knew, including the owners of Hooligans. And so we brought them in, and these guys had their presentation. And they said, look, here's some associated names, Mint, because of banking town, right? Mm-hmm. So Charlotte's a banking town. We have the history of the money here, the gold rush. I think the gold rush was actually one of the fan groups they came up with. And we were sitting there, and throughout the collaboration, I remember I looked at Matt Garner, and I was like, in my head, Mint was resonating, and I couldn't help but think of the color mint, and I was like, man, that'll never work, because I don't like that color, right? I was like, how's that color going?
Like seafoam green.
Yeah, it's like, God. So then, there was something that said Mint City, and it was like Mint City supporters or Mint City something. And then the next page had something like the Gold Collective, or, it was just, there was all these kind of bullet points. Mm-hmm. And I remember Matt called me, or I called him afterwards. I can't remember which order it went in, but he goes, it has to be Mint City Collective. And during the meeting, right afterwards, I had told Tim or Nick, one of the two guys, I was like, what about Mint City Collective? And to hear Matt say that aside from me, and then we came together, I said, that's got to be one of the choices. So they sent out an email a couple days later with 5 choices. I made them add the 6th as Mint City Collective, and they put it out, and we all voted. And it was almost unanimous that the Mint City Collective name came to be. And so then those guys got to work. They started looking at the history, the story, and we were like, well, how do we build a brand? And they're the branding experts, and I haven't mentioned this, but I'm working on setting up a podcast, and they're actually going to be one of my first guests. So
nice. Stay tuned.
Yeah. But, they put together this package and the whole spiel. And once they sent us the first few branding things, like the logo and the eagle and the Mint City and the Day Zero stuff, like, I was blown away. And I remember we were all sitting there arguing. It was like, if we use mint in the Panthers blue, there's no way you could not associate that with Seattle. Well, these guys put together our color package, which I think Zach actually put into Slack in the early days.
Multiple pages.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very, very detailed as to why and how this color scheme is that much different than every team in Major League Soccer and ultimately almost every team in the country. And so when they put it together, I was like, well, what about the Seattle? And they did a page of the Seattle jersey and the Mint City colors, where we used the Panther blue and that mint. Mm-hmm. And my God, on the page, it was that much different that you would know what Mint City was and what Seattle was. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? Maybe I can come to like this color mint. And yeah, that's kind of how the story started.
So that's how the Mint City Collective came to be. And that all happened like before summer 2019. Is that right? because summer 2019 is when you guys kind of unveiled things and went public, and we had a meeting and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we actually launched. Our official launch was right around when Mexico played here in July.
Yeah.
There was about 5 of us walking around the stadium passing out these Mint City Collective stickers, and all they said was, "It's time to strike," with our hashtags, and then on the bottom it was in Spanish.
Right.
And for me it was important to get out there and try and touch base with the Mexican fans. And to have a sticker that wasn't just in English, to have it in Spanish was most important, because how many of them are not going to be able to read the English part and just throw it away? Like, what is this? So we wanted to get immersed in the soccer culture, and it was before we even had the Day Zero kits. So we had, at that point, we had just launched our website and our branding. We hadn't launched any memberships, none of that stuff. That stuff launched
early fall. Maybe.
Yeah, early fall.
Yeah.
I think it was August or September.
And this is all long before it was even a real guarantee that we were going to have a team, which I think is an important thing to point out. Things were leaning that way. You mentioned that Tepper mentioned MLS a lot, and it was going that way. But there was not even close to a guarantee that a team would come here. So
Absolutely.
This is all grassroots happening before it was even a guarantee that you.
Yeah, and we felt passionate that if we could put this out there, that at the very least Don Garber could see that there's a grassroots effort to build a fan base here in Charlotte. We hadn't reached our full potential, and I still don't think we have. But I think at that point we were gaining steam and gaining momentum. We just needed people to come out, and I can't remember when that first meeting was.
Yeah, it was the end of July, because I covered it for Soccer and Sweetsea, and we had, I think you had maybe 50 people out at NODA.
That was an impressive meeting.
There was
I'm
a
not
lot of
gonna
people
lie.
that showed up.
Yeah.
And I remember asking a question there that we had several hundred people signed up to be in a supporters group for a team that didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Which was both impressive and a little alarming that people were that excited, right? But then by December, nothing much could really happen without a team at that point. And then by December, we were invited to be a part of the announcement. And that day, I think the numbers went over 1,000. Yeah, it was close to 1,000.
Oh my God, it was ridiculous.
Members. Right?
Let me tell you, the Christmas holiday this year, I was responding to emails every single day where it was "Hey, I bought a membership as a gift." I'm like, "We ran out of shirts."
Why isn't this here for Christmas? I'm sorry.
We're trying. I swear to you, it didn't help that Zach, he's been a godsend for this group, but he was extremely busy with football.
Right, it's the middle of football season.
Middle of football season, because the Roaring Riot's going, and he went to every single away Panthers game, every home Panthers
including
game.
London.
Including London,
It wasn't just normal away games. They had a London trip in the middle there.
And so, actually, funny story, when we met at that brewery, he had just gotten back from scouting London for the first time. And he's a Spurs fan, so
right.
I don't know if
Tottenham,
he wants
not
me
San Antonio.
Yeah.
Sorry,
this is a soccer podcast. Come on, Johnny.
I mean, it's still American, guys. Come on, just in case.
But yeah, he had just gotten back from London scouting, and he was like, yeah, and that was before the Panthers had announced they're playing in London. Mm-hmm. So, this guy had some sort of insight. I don't know to what extent he really had with in regards to the MLS team, but he talks to people. He has to. Mm-hmm. With the way that the Roaring Riot operates, he kind of has to be in communication with them. And so for us, it was a blessing to have that ability to at least have somebody say, hey, this is what you guys are doing is a good job. Keep it up. You guys are and most of the stuff that we found out was through news outlets. But occasionally Zach would chime in and say, hey, guess what? What are you guys doing on this date? And that's kind of one of the things, one of the beauties of the Mint City Collective Slack that we have for our members. Mm-hmm. It's one of those where he was able to reach out to the members and say, hey, look, we're going to have this event at Hooligans. I can't tell you anything else.
Mark your calendar.
Can you please join us that day? And whether or not, I don't know to what extent he has, what contacts he has and all that stuff, but he has been able to kind of help us lay our foundation even more through the Roaring Riot with their support, with the help of that organization and their fans. We've got a chapter in Denver because of the Roaring Riot.
Yeah, Denver, Colorado.
That's awesome. Not Denver, North Carolina.
Well, I thought it was Denver, North Carolina at first.
Yeah.
I think it's true, too, what you said about the Slack, that just having, I think, 300 active members now in that thing.
So 1/3 of our entire membership
right, is in Slack and talking. But the collective has already brought together so many people that have both sources and skills, right? So we have people who are connected with city government, and they have insight into some things that maybe other people don't know.
Right.
And then we've got people with graphic design skills who are putting together kit concepts. And we've got like all these different things that go on in there. Because we're all a community already without a team or a section. It's so weird. What are we doing?
It's awesome.
And I think
it's really cool.
Awesome.
It's cool.
I think the word you're looking for.
Awesome. That's what I meant.
And I've seen one of my favorite channels is the Chance channel. If you haven't noticed, I'll just put some random stuff in there, and it's fun to see what people are coming up with, because it's the chants, for instance, have to be a very organic thing. There's a lot of things that we need structure to, but there's certain elements of our culture that we have to let grow from within. And when you're not meeting and you don't have a team and you don't have active things going on with an organization, how can you develop this stuff? And so one of the things that we've done is establish chapters. And so a few of our chapters have met up and had their meetings. And so they're growing within their communities. We're establishing these chapters. They're in specific townships and specific neighborhoods of Charlotte. And they're growing immensely. I don't think Kendall's able to keep up. He's got a busy personal life as it is. Mm-hmm. Kendall's our chapter coordinator. And so he's been slammed with that, and they're having a meeting coming up soon with all that stuff. And to have that, the chapters I think can kind of help lay the foundation for the chants and stuff like that. Having the events that Mint City's got coming up throughout the summer, whether it's the Knights baseball games, the Independence games, the Hornets games, the Checkers games, whatever it might be. Apparently Rage Against the Machine concert. But it's nice to see all these elements coming together through the Slack channel. But the fact that these people that are complete strangers that live in their own neighborhoods can now meet up with each other and give them that sense of community. And people that live in Ballantyne are immersed within NODA's culture just because of our ability to communicate directly with them. Mm-hmm. And so it is this great sense of community. I personally think and hope and wish that we can continue to grow that. I'd like to get, again, more Latin American folks out there, because there's a huge contingency in Cabarrus County, Union County. And so it's going to be fun to watch that part of the culture grow. And I think we've got a few things in the works for that as well. Especially even with the Mexico game coming up in March against Czech Republic, is their plan? Mm-hmm. So, and we'll be doing some stuff around that as well with Mexican supporter group, the Pancho Villa's Army. So it's for us, it's a great thing to be immersed within the culture, but it's more important for me personally, to see our members getting out in the communities and doing better for their community.
Yep, absolutely.
That's what Vi Lyles talked about at the announcement. The mayor, she said that this is a chance for new sort of, I forget what her exact wording was, but I wanted to find it there, like new community connections to be built.
Yep.
And so it's not just like businesses connecting with businesses or sponsorships with the Panthers or that sort of thing, but it's stuff in the neighborhoods, and it's stuff like what we're doing with street soccer, and it's stuff like us with Pancho Villa's Army in March. And there's just so many different ways that the launch of a sports team can impact a city, that the ways that we're already seeing Mint City Collective working on in this year, and then hopefully in the years to come, like, it's a really encouraging thing for all of Charlotte, not just a soccer team that plays 17 games a year, right, in that big stadium. I wanted, maybe, I don't know if Corey had more questions, but what sort of things are coming that people could get involved in. If they're listening to this maybe for the first time, hearing about Mid City Collective, which would be odd. I don't know how that happened, but I know
Twitter.
I know we have at least one event per month planned through like September or October at this point already. Like, is there anything in particular that people should be trying to get out and get involved in? And then we'll jump to 2021 actually too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, there's a lot of sporting events in the city of Charlotte that we're going to be doing. Whether it's the Knights. I think our next big game is a Hornets game. And I was actually just talking to the ticket sales rep for the Knights this morning. So we'll be having those coming up in March. We've got, I think the Nashville trip with all their cluster F of whatever's going on there.
Nashville's had some trouble, yeah.
I think a lot of people were scared to go there, so we've kind of stepped back from that a little bit. We still encourage members to go, but we'll have a few out there.
I'm planning on going.
Yeah, Nashville's a fun town. If you get a chance to go out there to watch a soccer game, do it. I would recommend it.
If you're coming to Nashville, let us know either in Slack or on Twitter, because we'll have a group that gets together for sure.
Right. And as for within the communities, engage with your chapters. If you live in Noda, if you live in Gaston County, if you live in Cabarrus County, if you live in Ballantyne, wherever you are in Charlotte or the region around Charlotte, find your chapter. You can find them on Twitter. Most of Mid-City Collective's mentions have one or two of the chapters in there actively involved. Most of all, if you're a member, get into the Slack channel. If you haven't gotten on the Slack channel, email me, jay@midcitycollective.com, and I'll send you an invite, after I confirm that you're a member. But, and so just stay involved with your community. If you see events around, if you see a pickup game, get out there, talk to people, engage with folks. Do not be intimidated by other people. That was one of the early stage things for me was I was just afraid to talk to people. Because it was almost like I was embarrassed to be a soccer fan early on in my life. And then once I realized that other soccer fans exist, I was like, dude, screw this. Like, I'm going to make it known. And everybody knows I'm a soccer fan, and I make it known. And so, don't be afraid to talk to people because you'll never know who you can impact, even if it's not soccer. So as a Mid-City member, remember that you do represent our organization. And so get out in the community, talk to businesses, talk to, whatever it can be to be involved. Start a pickup game. Get out and clean up a park, clean up some streams. Do whatever you can to be engaged within your community. Engagement was one of the key points I talked about in that meeting in July. So we've got events where we can all meet up and get together, and I think those are very, very important to help build our sense of community. But don't be afraid to get out and do other events with other chapters. If one chapter is hosting an event, don't just because you're not a member of that chapter, or if you don't live in that area, doesn't mean you can't go out there. And I'll touch on one more thing. I haven't sent the email yet, but I'm trying to plan an early spring foot golf tournament with Mid-City Collective, and it may be a collaborative effort, but and I'll get in more detail on that at some other point. But I'm looking forward to having that and hosting that and having us be able to do something big with that. So
that's awesome. And this is something we touched on last episode too. Is it like, I know we're still a year. A year is a long time and a short time, and depending on how you look at it. But there's a lot going on with the collective in this year, even though we don't have a team on the field yet. So if you're wanting to get involved, there are things to do. There are things we're doing in the community. There are events going on. There's ways to get involved. So definitely, if you're not a member, head to mintcitycollective.com. That's where you can find out about membership, get your sweet mint-colored T-shirt.
Last week we went to a Checkers hockey game together.
You did.
Like, there's stuff all the time going on.
There is, absolutely.
And not only that, if you have something that you would like to be involved with or you feel passionate about, please let us know.
Yep.
I'm not afraid to put it out there. So and even if it's in the Slack channel and it has nothing to do with Mid-City. I'm running a 5K in March or April. I can't remember when it is. But, if you want to come out and cheer, if you want to come out and cheer me on, feel free. I'll mention that. So,
do you want to strap a microphone on and just record a podcast while you're running?
You just want to hear, yeah, sure, why not? But no.
There are weird podcasts.
I don't want to be one of them.
There definitely are. Well, awesome. Thank you, Jay, for joining us. We'll definitely have you on in the future, I know, but we appreciate you telling the story of the history of Mint City Collective.
And it sounds like you've got a podcast coming, hopefully, sometime soon, called The Collective Voice. We will promote the heck out of that. And we have always seen this Mint City Soccer Show as like one of a few.
Yep.
At Mint City Collective, like there are so many different voices in this city, so many different like perspectives and subjects that we could cover that we couldn't all cover it in just one Mint City Soccer Show. So excited to hear what you have coming with that in the coming weeks.
Yeah, so it's called The Collective Voice. My plan is to bring on Mint City members, bring on non-Mint City members, people in the Charlotte soccer community and the greater Charlotte community in general, and get to know people. Bring everybody together through the sport of soccer.
I love it.
And just talk to anybody and everybody that wants to listen and chat with me. So
That's awesome.
If you want to check me out, I haven't even posted anything on it, but it's at Mint City Voice on Twitter.
You already got the Twitter account.
I already
got
it.
That's the way to do it. He's a
Following
professional.
right
Yeah. So check it out. It may be private. I don't know. But
It is.
But yeah, so it's still in the process. I'll be recording my first episode in the next couple weeks and
Awesome.
putting that out there eventually. So
Very
Cool. Well, thank you, Johnny and Jay, for joining us. And
Yeah, man.
thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you in a couple weeks.